The smile, a light for attracting attention. Album review, let's chat about it. Hey guys, what's going on? John here from What's Spinning, here tonight to chat about this very highly anticipated debut of The Smile. Whoa, Nelly, we have a new sort of supergroup or side project, whatever you want to call it, from some very familiar faces. We have Tom York, Johnny Greenwood, as well as Tom Skinner of Sons of Kemet fame. He's a cool dude. And to the surprise of absolutely nobody, we've got Nigel Godrich on production. And for a while, I've been very curious to see how this album turns out. And for the most part, I did enjoy the singles leading up to it. I'm not going to waste any more time. For most of this album, the hype is real. This album, gets off to a pretty hot start with The Opposite. I love this track so much, and this is exactly where I figured that they would be sounding. We get a very hypnotic guitar riff, we get some very well-paced drumming, as well as very ethereal, very haunting performance by Tom York. It's one of the most mysterious tracks here. It's very hard to focus on. A lot of this album is. But it's also very exciting in its own way. And not only that, it's also a really great medium. It's just the right amount for now of just the classic Radiohead sound to an extent, but, taking some new interesting turns. Pana-vision is also so freaking good. It's so haunting and so unapologetically cold. But it's also really beautiful. It reminds me a lot of Tom's work on the new Suspiria soundtrack. Between the pacing, the very ethereal nature to this track, it's just the right blend of cryptic and really beautiful. And if I'm going to at least sort of reference Radiohead here, this is kind of the sound that I always loved hearing from them. I'm going to try and keep my Radiohead references to as very few as I can. This is a very different project as a whole, and you should listen to it even if you're not a Radiohead fan. But honestly, at the same time, you're gonna realize going through this album, it's hard not to think of Radiohead or make references. It's nearly impossible at times. The Smoke, I have a lot of the same feelings on. This is a meticulous, hypnotizing track, driven by a really hypnotic bass riff and some really tense drumming once again. The pacing here, too, my god, and Tom's incredibly haunting vocal performance will stick with you long after this track is over. And some of the little details here are so good, like the jazzy woodwinds that pop in. It's something that I like whenever they pop in on this album, really. And I love Thin Thing so freaking much. It's upbeat, it's very anxious, just sounds so uncomfortable in its own skin. Between Tom's very chilling performance and this riff that's so hard to freaking place, and the sort of post-punk vibes that we get here, there's a lot to take in. It's a really refreshing sound, and honestly, for the more raw-sounding tracks from The Smile, this might be the best one. I will say this, though. I kind of wish this album was maybe a little more original at times. Just a little bit. Like, I'm not too wildly crazy about the same as an intro. I mean, the tension is certainly here. Hell, the tension doesn't let up throughout most of this album. But man, if we got more of this, I wouldn't have liked as much as I did on this album. It's a little too scatterbrained for me. The electronic beat that pops in is one of the least captivating here, and everything just kind of circles around it and just doesn't really have a lot of concrete thoughts. And don't hate me, but I haven't been that into You Will Never Work in Television Again either. Don't get me wrong, this is easily the most raw and wild thing here, and I get that. The excitement is here. But it's a little sloppy, and as far as production goes, this is easily my least favorite track here. Speech Bubbles is also not my cup of tea. It's actually one of the more one-note tracks here, and Tom's vocal performance is not that impressive either. This, to me, sounds like what you would get if you told an AI to come up with a new Radiohead single. And if y'all will allow me one more Radiohead reference, this also sounds like the material that I was not into, like on The King of Limbs. And Waving a White Flag is easily the most obtuse and formless track here. It's built up strong around this very wonky synth melody, but it just gets really sloppy and really repetitive and annoying. And the rest of the track that follows just seems, not very cohesive, especially when you look at some of the other tracks here. The rest of the album, though, it's pretty good, and yeah, you probably expected this sound moving into this album, but that doesn't make it a bad thing. Open the Floodgates is freaking gorgeous as far as a very lush, very cinematic ballad, look no further. It's also very heavy and suffocating in its own way. Pianos and the more electronic side to this track really play off each other wonderfully, and personally for me, I've always loved hearing Tom on a track like this. It's elegant, it's mysterious, it's so good. Free in the Knowledge may be the most cinematic thing here. I love the icy, dreamy synths and the strummed guitar. Once again, plays off each other wonderfully. And Tom's vocal performance? As far as a vocal performance goes, this might be his most emotional and impassioned performance here. Okay, sue me. I've got another Radiohead one for you. This also reminds me of some of my favorite tunes from them ever, like Pyramid Song or How to Disappear Completely. It's exquisite, so is a Hairdryer. The warm, sort of sketchy rhythms on this track seem like home to me. It's one of the most layered and intricate tracks here, but it's also one of the most captivating. When the Smile do their sound and do it right, they grab you and they do not let go. It's so dystopian, it's so cold, but it's also warmly inviting, which sounds like a lot of the material from any of these men or any of their side projects. And by the end of the track, when the repeated mantra of "look at all the pretty lights" rolls around, it's nothing short of mesmeric. We Don't Know What Tomorrow Brings is nothing short of a late album knockout. This track is so good. It might be my favorite deep cut here. I honestly wish we got more upbeat tracks in this vein. It's paranoid. It also has a sort of cyberpunk feel to it between the very frantic synths that we get here and Tom's performance, which is just manic. There's also a heavy use of synths. This is easily one of the most original sounding tracks on this entire album. For a few short minutes, I'm not thinking about Radiohead. I'm not thinking about any tracks from any of their previous projects, whatever it is. I'm thinking about this. And Skrting on the surface, honestly, it might be the best track here. It does sound like a little bit of a recap of where we've been for the last 50 minutes, but it's done tastefully. I love the strummed riff that we get here. It's actually one of the more memorable ones that we get here. And the very spacey, very surreal vibes to this all. It's very mysterious. I also really do love the orchestrations that pop in. I'm really into that. They come off so classy. Yeah, this album's pretty darn solid. I mean, yeah, my one major complaint is that there are times where I wish this album was a little bit more original, and, you know, when this album gets bad, some of these tracks just really don't do anything for me. But, you know, for a side project from these guys, from the people on this project, and the hype that was here leading into it, yeah, the hype is real for the most part. It's not perfect, but man, this is a really solid album from these guys, and one that, you know, I could see myself coming back to quite a bit. Maybe wish it was a little more original, but that's just me. I'm feeling a very strong 7 on this album, but let me know what you guys think down below. If you like the video, be sure to give us a like, give us a subscribe, and let me know down below what you would like for me to chat about in the future. And until next time, have a great day, guys.